I want you two guys to ask each other questions before we move on. But let me just bring up something Dan said this morning. It really, sometimes in politics, you do poorly when you can't say the truth, and voters sort of get a sense of it. So, like, there was this long period where Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton pretended they weren't for same-sex marriage. And so it just wasn't a great thing to say because everybody knew they weren't telling the truth. On this one, and Dan has made this point, a very smart point. I really don't know what AOC thinks should happen to the 20 million people here illegally. People on the left, like, what do they think? They won't really say. Like, they think they should all just be given amnesty. I don't know, but it's just so difficult to understand where the Democrats are on this because they seem to be saying we're for keeping people here illegally over protecting law enforcement from being attacked. That's basically what they seem to be saying. You guys got questions for each other? Feel free. If not, I'll move on. Do you have any questions for each other? No? Okay.
No, I mean, look, I think, Matt, if you like, one thing I am curious about is like, where does Trump go from here? Like, what does this issue potentially look like in 26, in 28? Like, can they continue to press this for a lot longer? Or do you think it's because I know there's been frustration in the party that he's not moving fast enough, that they're not deporting enough people, that there's been kind of grumbling and increasing frustration on the right. I think he's fired 3 immigration heads in the last, in his first 6 months. Like, do you think there is a limit, like, that they can keep driving this, or do you think it's the gift that keeps on giving?
I do think it's a gift that keeps on giving for now. I will say this, like, when I was on the road with Tim Scott in 23, what was eye-opening for me going across the country, right, not being here in DC or going to New York, wherever like that, was how you almost felt on issues like China and immigration, you almost couldn't go too far right for the not even just our base, but like the median-ish voter. Yeah. That was a huge takeaway for me, and it was eye-opening, and Trump had the pulse on that far faster than a lot of people.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And I guess for me, my question for you is, who would you want to see as a spokesperson on this? Like, in an ideal world, I mean, I saw, was it Linda or Loretta Sanchez? I get them all confused. She was awful on CNN. And just, who do you kind of want to see in the party if you had to do a cable hit to convince them? Who would you want?
I mean, I would
Terry Moran would be probably.
Yeah, Terry. A lot of free time for Terry.
I think someone like Ruben Gallego, who's from a border state, who can speak to, who one will say it is a problem. This is not fake news. This is not Fox News ginning it up. It is a real problem in my state. The inaction has caused, overcrowding in schools and in hospitals. It's a drain on our resources. Their crime is an issue. Again, this is not like a made up talking point. And here is how I would address it. Here are the things that we as a party, we need to admit there's a problem, and then we need to offer solutions. I think AOC is another one. I think, to Mark's point, she's actually begun in this first 6 months of this calendar year to show some, I think, awareness, whether she's going to run statewide or nationally, that she's got to broaden this. And I think when she speaks, the base listens, right? There isn't the knee jerk, like, okay, Ruben's a moderate from Arizona, he's got to say that, right? Maybe he doesn't really believe it. With AOC, it'd be like Nixon goes to China. There'd be a little like, whoa, So I think if either of those two stepped forward, but like you said it earlier, I mean, I was looking today as of this afternoon, Gretchen Whitmer has said nothing. Josh Shapiro has said nothing. I don't believe Chuck Schumer has said anything, unless that has changed here this afternoon. And they've put out statements on other issues, right? So it tells you that nobody wants to touch this, and this is the continued problem. There's just paralysis.
So sometimes reporters don't ask politicians questions because of bias. Sometimes it's ignorance. Sometimes it's laziness. One of my favorite examples of this is I once asked after Jennifer Granholm had been governor of Michigan for 3 or 4 years. I asked someone who worked with her what her position on NAFTA was. And they said she'd never taken a position on NAFTA. And I said, she ran for governor of Michigan and they never asked her position on NAFTA. And this person said, yeah, kind of crazy, right? Like, everybody should be asked their position on this. But the Democrats who don't want to answer so far haven't, although I suspect it'll be asked about on the Hill tomorrow if it keeps going, right? Has to be.
Yeah,
Has to be.
absolutely. Particularly
All right.
Nancy Pelosi in the California delegation.
Yeah.
Want more great clips like that? I've got an idea. Hit the subscribe button, be part of the Two-Way community, never miss a clip, and you can always watch our full episodes, join them live, go to twoway.tv.